know, this is a very big deal, and in fact, it's been in the headlines in the United States, and it's been used as a political hot potato in the United States, and of course, it's had its repercussions here in Mexico. And to discuss this issue, I welcome to the studio Lila Bed. She's from the Mexican Council on Foreign Relations. She's also here in Mexico City from Washington, D.C. Lila, thanks for being with us again.
Agustin, thank you so much for having me here.
So talk to us about this political football that is the migrant caravan. What's the latest? You're just in from D.C. What are you hearing up there in the American capital?
So yeah, I mean, I think you correctly have stated that it's a political hot potato. I think on both the Mexican and the U.S. side, there are different discourses, but definitely on the U.S. side, you know, President Donald Trump understood in these midterms that, you know, anti-immigration rhetoric really works with his support base, and I think that he's in certain ways, you know, kind of using this discourse to hit home, and especially to his base. On the Mexican side, I think that we're dealing with what potentially could be a humanitarian crisis, as Mayor of Tijuana just stated earlier this week, that it's costing them $27,000 a day to house and care for these almost 7,000 migrants that are currently on the border between San Diego and Tijuana. A lot of them are, you know, trying to apply for asylum in the United States. I think they're processing around 100 of them per day. They're living in conditions that are less than favorable. A lot of them, you know, are cold and hungry, and so there is this pressure on the Mexican government, especially on the federal government, to respond as necessary to this crisis.
And what didn't make the headlines, and I'm actually surprised, we transmit from Tijuana on open television. You can actually see us on the San Diego side just by turning on your TV. But so this is very important. Of course, it's a little early over there because they're in Pacific time. But this is very important that they actually shut down a large part of the San Isidro border crossing. You have to understand the U.S.-Mexico border is, of course, the most legally crossed border in the world. And in particular, the San Isidro crossing, with about 43 ports of entry, and that's just passenger traffic, is the most crossed entry point on the planet. And this week, I was hearing reports, and I saw some pictures from friends who were up there, that they shut down many of these lanes and that there was military presence and they put barbed wire. What do you know about that?
So yeah, so I think the barbed wire was part of this new strategy on behalf of Secretary of Defense Mattis and Secretary of Homeland Security Nielsen to kind of reinforce the wire that is on the border. I think this whole idea of sending military troops, I mean, they are limited by the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 that limits the use of federal troops to enforce domestic law, and immigration is a domestic law.
Yeah, just to make sure that,
yes,
that people understand. Posse Comitatus basically does limit, just like Lila said, it does not allow the military to participate in law enforcement within the territory of the United States. And yet there was this order on behalf of the commander-in-chief that if they did find themselves in a situation where they needed to use force, that they were allowed to use legal force. And there was, do you think this will be challenged?
I think it will be challenged. I mean, Secretary of Defense Mattis said that there's nothing to worry about, that they're not going to use lethal force, because breaking this historical precedent, you know, of sending federal troops, which honestly the National Guard as well, which is different, really is sort of, it depends both on the president and on the governors. It's really like a state issue. The governor should usually ask the federal government to send the National Guard as an assistance to CBP patrol agents, and not so much to use as aggression towards immigrants, but they can, you know, help them and assist them in signaling, you know, here comes a migrant, or helping them in various surveillance issues, but they can't actually be aggressive unless they are told directly from the president. And there's this kind of misinterpretation as to whether Donald Trump actually believes that they should use lethal force. And I think that each secretary has been very cautious as to how lethal force is interpreted. And I think that a lot of them are taking cautionary measures to not, you know, overstep this act and what they're really, you know, the responsibilities is of the military and the National Guard on domestic issues.
Lila Bed from the Mexican Council on Foreign Relations, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And now we're going to check in with the internet.